So I was kicked out of Hebrew school for leading a student insurrection. I went to this synagogue in a nearby town, in Newtown, Connecticut, actually. And there was a group of students who I led during a class break where everyone was allowed to be outside. I led them into the woods, down to a stream, along the stream, and convinced them that we didn't need to go back to the synagogue. And like an hour, whatever, too late. I don't know. I remember it as being like days later. When you're 11 years old, it could have been 15 minutes, right?
Right, right.
I remember it being like an hour and a half. We got back to the synagogue, and I remember all the classes were over with, and they were looking for us. And of course, everyone asked, why did you all run away? And everyone, of course, ratted me out, all pointed at me like, Greg did it. So yes, I was kicked out of Hebrew school. I think my family was asked not to return to the synagogue and declared a menace to education by the Jewish Board of Education, whatever it was. The point is that I got sent to a yeshiva on the weekends to study. Well, not on the weekends because you can't go on Saturday, but on Sunday to study for my bar mitzvah. And that's how I got through my bar mitzvah, was studying with extremely religious rabbinical students at a yeshiva because I couldn't function in a normal Hebrew school, evidently. So
did that make you take it more seriously? Because
you can't not. I mean, you can't
Right.
not. I mean, you're hanging out in the yeshiva, and these guys are like next level Jews. This is not introductory level. This is not introductory level religion. This is serious.
They're in the black, and they got the hats, and and the payas, and the sitzes, and
Yes.
Yeah.
All of it. So yeah, there's no way to not study seriously for your bar mitzvah. But also, my parents now, who laugh about that story, at the time didn't think it was entirely funny, and I felt like I had something to prove to them that I could actually get through this thing without the entire family, extended family, showing up and being embarrassed. So yeah, I studied hard, and that was gosh, I haven't told that story. I don't know if I've ever told that story in an interview, certainly, but pretty fun.
Oh, the week before or the week of my bar mitzvah, and you got to realize, Screaming for Change is out. I'm not listening to it. Like Nelson, my brother, all of them are listening to it. There was a guy I think he was doing something. I don't know what he was doing. Anyway, the guy convinced me to shave my head. And let's just say, it's just interesting. I never knew any of this about you. And it's funny how we both, right at that time, this really it's supposed to just be like a special time. Forget the religious aspect of it. It's like middle school time. It's such and just shaved the head, and my dad saw me. My dad wanted to hit me, and he goes, "I can't hit you." He's all, "Nothing I do is going to make this better." So I'm done.
So great. Well, and you raised an important point, right? That the ceremony itself signifies this transformation to manhood or whatever.
Right.
But let's be realistic. We're talking about middle school kids, and what do middle school kids want to do? They want to throw rocks through windows and lead insurrections and whatever they want to do, right? So it's this weird, just why are we doing this kind of situation? But I mean, I got through it, you got through it, all the better, and we're here to laugh about it today. So that's fantastic.
By the way, I don't know what it is, but for some reason now you're reminding me a lot of Jason Bateman. I don't know why. I can't put my hand on it.
That's a great honor.
But I think he's doing you. If you want to know the honest, truth,
Okay. That hashtag Jason Bateman. Pay attention to Greg Bennick and his bar mitzvah stories, because you've got a lot to learn.
Okay. Now, I have one more question before we get into the questions, which is going to be all over the place, and we're just going to we're going to power through this, and you are an orator, and it's going to be fine. But when you and I met in 1995, when I was living with Brian Chu,
I think 1993, but go on.
Okay.
It might have been. Okay. It might have been earlier, but anyway, please go on. Early 90s.
When you in the apartment in Lower Haight, when you played Trial for Brian Chu, I wasn't in the room. I was in the kitchen, but I heard it, and I remember telling you, and Derek Harn was with you, and he which I always thought was really cool. He made underwear that was pop culture centric.
He did.
Dude, he was Hot Topic before Hot Topic.
his company was called Lee Mate, and you're right. If I played Trial for you, it would have been 1995 or after. You're totally right. Derek's company was called Lee Majors, after the guy,
Oh
$6 million man. And what he did is he would go around to thrift stores before thrifting was really a thing like it is now, and vintage and all. And he would find bed sheets, clean bed sheets of Dukes of Hazzard, Star Wars, whatever, Raiders of the Lost Ark bed sheets, and he had hired somebody to sew them into boxer shorts. And we all forever were wearing Lee Majors, which was his brand of boxer shorts. So we would wear them all over the place and celebrate that cause. But he was making boxer shorts for a living for a while.
I just remember thinking that's such a good idea. Like what he was doing, and then I mean now stuff like that, like you can find that many places, like that idea. But when I heard Trial, I remember coming in telling you guys, hey, I think this sounds really good. If I would have told you, had like a whole time machine and said, hey, X many years later, we're going to kind of do an interview and I'm going to be talking to you about this. If I would have told that Greg then what would your response have been?
I would have thought you were out of your damn mind. I honestly, my insecurity about what Trial was and was doing lasted in, I mean, for every record until people would give us feedback. Like I never had confidence in it. And in fact, I remember standing in the studio when we started to record the Are These Our Lives record. I hadn't spoken, even as loud as I'm speaking now, in 10 months. I had damaged my voice very seriously and went and took opera lessons, which consisted of me just breathing basically and humming and vocalizing slightly for more than half a year. And the first time anyone heard me sing again, not even knowing if I would have a voice, was in the studio. And when we recorded the first line of the song on Awakening, the line is, Are We the Dead? I remember screaming that line for the first time. And Brian Redman, rest in peace, threw his hands up in the air. I could see him through the window of the studio, like with this look on his face, like, like he has a voice. And that, I get goosebumps thinking about it. That was the moment where I was like, oh, okay, maybe this is going to work out okay. I was always thinking it was not going to work out, not going to be listened to, not going to be paid attention to. And if you told me that after, I was telling somebody recently that for every week since the record came out, I get some email, text message, Facebook, Instagram, direct message, whatever it is, from somebody saying, this record changed my life. It's been 23 years now. It boggles my mind. I still don't believe it. And back then, I would have had you institutionalized. I never would have believed it.
Now, that type of training, that whole opera training, did that allow for you to be able to tour and play and have a voice night after night? Is that the kind? Did it teach you how to use your voice in the right way, kind of thing?
Yeah, it absolutely did. Now, keep in mind, it didn't sink in. So that was 1998 into the spring of 1999 when I took that training with Charles Davis, Studio Voice. That's how he talked in Seattle. It was 2015, maybe 2013. Trial was playing a show in St. Petersburg in Russia. And I remember we were almost to the end of the set and my voice hadn't gone out. And my voice felt strong. And I remember the moment thinking to myself, oh my gosh, I know how to sing in a hardcore band. And so it was, whatever that is, 15, 16, whatever, 14 years it took for the information to sink in before I could sing and have my voice not go out. And even today, like if I'm in the studio today, I can do a session of 5 hours, 6 hours, and then be fine. It took like a decade and a half for that to work, but it's all rooted back in proper breathing, supporting your voice correctly, and just proper, I don't know, kinesthetic, physical technique, really, more than anything else. So, yes, my answer is yes, but I evidently was a very slow learner. The guy thought it would take 15 minutes or, 15 days, and it took 15 years. So, go figure.
How did you get into hardcore, and was the social justice, social consciousness always there?
I got into hardcore through a couple friends of mine. There was a friend of mine named Chris in Connecticut who came over to my house one day with a cassette tape that he'd recorded off radio stations he managed to pick up at his parents' house with some antenna that he put on the roof of his parents' house. and played Angry Samoans, Meatmen, bands like that for me. And I was blown away. I mean, I was a hair metal kid. I mean, I still am, ironically, a hair metal kid. If I'm listening to music or late at night going down a rabbit hole, I'm not doing a rabbit hole of YouTube videos about the history of hardcore. Never. It's always the history of Dokken, the history of Bon Jovi, the history of Quiet Riot, Twisted Sister, White Lion, you name it. That's all I listened to until Chris showed up at my house with that cassette. And then that cassette was my entree into, hold on one second, there's other types of music that are like, wait, these people swear in their songs? That doesn't happen in a Bon Jovi song. And that got me intrigued. And then we found there are record stores that cater to these ridiculous bands. And then we found there are venues. The Anthrax is right nearby in Norwalk, Connecticut, where these bands play. Like, what's that all about? And then I started meeting people, my friend John, my friend Al, all of whom, later went on to do things in punk and hardcore and whatnot. And we all kind of did. But we all came up together, just discovering, like, wait, wow, this Anthrax place is awesome. Wait, there's a place in New York too. Like, it was just a constant period of discovery. And I would say, sure, social consciousness was there, but it was just inherent in punk rock at the time. I mean, what were we listening to? We were, ultimately, when we found our way, we were listening to the Proletariat. We were listening to Dead Kennedys. We were listening to all sorts of bands like that who had not political themes, but certainly socially aware themes. And they weren't singing about the things that Dokken and Motley Crue were singing about. They were singing about things that seemed to matter. So that was really the consciousness, was that these were bands who were singing about things that matter, and maybe we could be a part of that too, or do that as well. So when we started to form bands and whatnot, that's kind of the direction that just organically came about.